Hey, good evening, everybody. Check, check. Yeah, there we go. We got audio. So, turn this down. Uh, well, first, good news. The team that started day one today, Frozen, made it to Pocatello. Looks like everybody's in one piece. Good news there. And green grass and high tides way up north is. It looks like they're struggling on to find their way up to Windy Bill right now. I'm reasonably sure what happened is somebody went in and cut the wrong trail this year. There's two trails in there that are parallel to each other. And a couple of teams have gotten up to Windy Bill and said Windy Bill wasn't saw it. I believe that. These guys, I think, have been on the wrong trail. But what I told them they could do is they could ride back out if they wanted to. They could try to get up from Junction Mountain Trail to get the challenge point, or they could do what Sean did, and they can just go to Scurvy and ride in from Scurvy if they want to. They've done enough work. So anyway, good news and all that. I'll catch up with the Frozen guys sometime tomorrow on their day off in Pocatello, and then we'll send them on their way. So I see there's a lot of people here tonight. I guess you guys know to expect fireworks during this rant. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to talk about the background of this story. And this is going to clear the air up, I think, or clear the air about a lot of snarky comments that I make that you may not understand what I'm referring to. So I went for a ride today. There were some trails that I'm thinking about putting on next year's tour, and I went down to ride them. And they're not too far from here. They're about 60 miles from my house. Get up today, bike's already loaded in the truck, go for a ride, pull into the parking lot of this area. And I noticed that there is a truck there that I recognize, pulling with a trailer that I recognize. And I recognize this for a couple of reasons. One, this trailer has got race stickers all over it for products that the people who own the bikes that go in that trailer don't possess. They're local racers, but they don't have any stuff. It's kind of funny. They got decals all over this trailer. They don't have any of the stuff that those decals represent. But this trailer is owned by an unsuccessful Tour of Idaho team from a few years ago. Those of you that have been around for a while may recall that I think it was 3 years ago, there was a team, two teams actually, and they all knew each other. They're racers. They pit side by side in every race. Everybody around here knows who these guys are. And I got calls from all along the tour saying, "Are you aware of what these guys are doing? That it's not two teams, it's not one team of two and another team of three. It's one team of five guys." Oh yeah, and they've got some people that are helping them out, and you could see in their photographs. There's five bikes in every single challenge point photo. It's just ridiculous. It's absurd. And at the end, they couldn't produce tracks. So here's the thing that makes this interesting. These guys all show up. There's two younger guys, and I feel a little bit bad for the two younger guys because I think they just didn't know what they were getting into. They show up here, and they'd spent months talking about winning the Tour of Idaho. What's the record for this day? What's the record for that day? And we told them the same thing we told everybody. Look, there are no records. Just go out and ride and try to keep your bike together. Those two guys show up here one day, and they're actually fairly polite guys. Now, they got no lights on their bike. They got basically no gear. It looks like they're going to a motocross race, not the Tour of Idaho. And about a day later, they PM me and said, "Well, we destroyed a tire. If we have someone come and help us, does that disqualify us?" And I said, "Yeah, it does." And they said, "Okay." And then mysteriously, about the time this other team shows up, these guys take off again. This other team was a little bit behind them, and off they go. And the second team that had come in, I'll never forget this. This is the year that my little girl was born. And so I'm trying to, nurse her and take care of her. And these guys come up, and they sit outside of my trailer. And they have three of the most sour faces you've ever seen. It's like they're sitting there. It's like three kids that are in the principal's office or something. And I'm trying to talk to them about their navigation. They've got like one GPS. I think they've got one Trailtech Voyager Pro between the three of them, and they've got one GPS between the three of them. And they clearly don't know what the hell they're doing. And I'm telling them, look, you guys have to figure this stuff out. That's part of it. You have to be able to produce tracks. Now, the interesting thing about this is there was a team this year that did this too. I'm trying to talk to these guys about this, trying to tell them, look, you got a day here. You can sort some of the stuff out. I'll help you with it. They weren't having any of it. I couldn't even get a complete sentence out before they told me why I was wrong. I had a team this year that did the same thing. I'm sitting there trying to give these guys a briefing, and I would get about half a sentence out, and they'd tell me why I was wrong. I always know how that's going to work. It works the same way every time. But anyway, these guys, I'll never forget this. I think I still might have their interview somewhere. If I have it, I'll pull it out of the archive and I'll show you. But these guys are all sitting there looking like somebody just shot their mom. It was remarkable how you could be that disrespectful. Somebody invites you to their house, is giving you an hour. I think I was 90 minutes with those guys. And I got a baby girl inside that's screaming because, I put her to bed to nap to go out to talk to these yahoos. So the whole thing was just absurd and ridiculous. And, some people, like they say in Cool Hand Luke, some men you just can't reach. So to make a long story short, these guys all go out. They bugger up the route. I mean, they rode the whole route. That much is clear to me. They did ride the route, but it was one team of 5, not two. And people along the way told me the same thing. You are aware that these guys are all together. And I said, yeah, I know. A friend of mine called me from a shop all the way down in Twin Falls and said, these guys have been talking about how they're going to do this the whole time. And yeah, I know. So in the end, what you hope is that, generally teams like that, that are like just out on the gas all the time, they're going to break something. And those guys, they did break things, but because they had help, they were able to get all that stuff fixed. Something that if you're self-supported, you can't do. So they get to the end, and I said, well, shit, they rode all the way to Sundance. This is going to be a problem. And sure enough, when they couldn't submit tracks. So I said, well, yeah, that's it. You can't submit tracks. There's nothing I could do. And it saved me, the pain of having to publicly humiliate the guys, which is probably what I should have done. I know you guys are full of shit, but I just said, no tracks, no Tour of Idaho. Now, I have done that before. In fact, a guy who is a good friend of mine was an early Tour of Idaho finisher, and I'm sure that guy rode the whole tour. Super nice guy. He's got, he didn't write like a 10,000-word treatise on Adventure Rider. He just said, he emailed me about 6 months after he was done. He goes, hey, do I get credit for doing this? I rode the whole thing. And I said, do you have any tracks? He said, I'll see if I can find them. And he never could. And that guy and I are still really good friends. He didn't take it personal. I just said, look, I need to see the tracks. And he said, oh, shit. So he'll come back one of these days and it'll be fine. That's happened before. People have been DQ'd in technicalities. And almost to the person, they've said, look, we know what the rules were. It's on us. That's okay. But these guys weren't having any of that. Not any of it at all. Now, into this little melodrama, there was a soloist that year that completed the tour and did a really good job. I don't have a problem with this guy at all. But he decided to insert himself unhelpfully into this situation as an advocate for these dumb shits. And, that's the kind of thing. Don't ever do that. Just stay out of it. First of all, you don't know what those guys did. It's not going to do any good. The fact that you just finished the tour thinks that you have some goodwill with me, that you can convince me to do something I know is wrong. It doesn't work that way. I'm not going to do that. I'm not mad at this guy, but it was crazy for him to get in the middle of this, and I don't know why he did it. So they think they have an advocate, and they're going around telling people all over the web, yeah, this guy Martin's a dick, and he did this, that, the other thing to us, and all I did was what I said I was going to do. I told you that what you were going to do wasn't going to work, and it didn't work. That's on you. So I told these guys, I will suspend the 72-hour rule. If you guys can produce one track from either of your teams, you claim you were independent, so I don't need to see tracks from anybody. I will give you 2 months. 2 months. And if you can come up with a track, I'll say okay. So those guys sent me about 10 or 15 variations of exactly the same thing, which was their PLB. Now, a Trailtech Voyager Pro automatically records a track. You have to tell it not to. So the fact that they had a TTVP with them and couldn't get a track out of it tells you something. You're not exactly dealing with the sharpest knives in the drawer, or there's something in that track they don't want you to see. So finally, in one evolution of sending me these enormous data dumps, I mean, this isn't like all of you did this year. You send me clean tracks, you just download the GPX and send it to me. These clearly were, it was like all of the data they had in every single device they had. And it took way too much time to sort through this stuff. And after a while, I started seeing they were just sending basically the same stuff over and over. And I said, enough. You have one more shot at this. You're wasting my time. Send me a clean track. And if you can do that, don't send me any more of these bogus tracks. Send me a clean track that shows that you did this, and I'll certify your tour. You'll get a jersey number. Never happened. Instead, it's like, wow, this guy's an asshole. And now, it's true, I am an asshole, but it's also true that these guys, they buggered themselves. So about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after all this is over, like there's all this crap going all over the web. These guys got all over the web and started crying. And of course, this is where the parallel story comes in of the group known as Ride to Hoe. You all know what I'm talking about. It's run by a guy whose moniker is Snoopy, and it is the greatest bunch of dipshits on the planet. And more about that later. These guys are in this group just talking trash, talking shit, yada, yada, yada. That's okay. I don't care about that. If you have ever been a musician, if you've been a writer, I write a weekly column for a newspaper. You get invective and venom all the time. It's just, you learn not to pay attention to that stuff. So, but I'm driving along in my car one night, or in my truck one night, and my kids and I were out. I'd taken my wife and my kids out to dinner. We're driving home, and a text message comes up in my truck, and I have a newer truck where it'll read the text message to you. So I don't recognize the number or anything, but it's a text message. It's still Tour of Idaho season, so I figured that it's very possibly someone out on the tour that needs some help, and I try to answer those text messages all I can. So I tell the truck, go ahead and read the text message to me. It's some doofus friend of these chuckleheads calling me, and he's at a race. I can hear bikes in the background. And I'm pretty sure these guys are all a local motocross event or something. And this guy is threatening me. If I ever find you on the trail, if these guys ever find you on the trail, we're going to kick your ass. Followed by this string of curse words and stuff like that, which my kids had to listen to, and my wife had to listen to. Now, the kids are pretty young. I don't think it did any permanent damage to them. My wife looks at me and goes, this is over a motorcycle thing? And I say, yeah, it's over a motorcycle thing. All right. So this goes on. These guys, they've been talking crap for years and years and years. And occasionally I still get a text message from numbers I don't recognize threatening me. Yeah, we better never see you out on a trail. We'll kick your butt if we ever see you on a trail. All right, whatever. Well, okay. So today I decide to go for a motorcycle ride. And I pull in this parking lot, and guess whose van is there? Truck, van, and trailer, which I recognize. It belongs to these chuckleheads. And I'm going, this is going to be great. I ain't scared. I'd make no pretense. I am not the most talented motorcycle rider in the world. I wasn't the most talented climber in the world, but I ain't scared. Let's go find these guys and see how this works out. So I know what trail they're on. They're on fence line because with their limited intellect, it's the only trail in the area I'm pretty sure they can find. So I go ride fence line, and I know I'm going to come up on these guys because I know what they're going to do is they're going to ride part of the way out. A lot of the local racers have kind of found this trail, and they like to just get on the gas and see how fast they can do it. So I know I'm going to catch these guys coming back. In fact, I hadn't even intended to ride fence line at first, but since I was pretty sure that's where these yahoos were, I decided to ride out there. Let's just see what kind of chat we're going to have. So I ride out there, and that big meadow, right where the ATV trails end and the single track starts, I encounter these guys in that meadow. I see them coming. And yeah, they're on the gas, man. They're coming up out of that single track into this meadow. And I pull right to the side of the trail, and I'm standing there with my bike. And I'm wearing a jersey that says Tour of Idaho. I've been wearing the same helmet for years. I'm wearing this Tour of Idaho jersey. It's the same outfit I always wear. Everybody knows who I am when they see me. And these guys go to slow down like they're going to talk, hey, how you doing, which is what you do when you meet people on the trail. They recognize who it is, and they take off. Those bikes look like they have been shot out of a cannon. It looks like they have Saturn V boosters bolted to the seat. That's how fast they get the hell out of there when they figure out who's standing beside the trail with his arms crossed looking at them. So they take off. Well, that's kind of what I expected, which is why this rant is called Alligator Mouth Canary Bum, because that's what we're talking about here. You're talking about a bunch of total chuckleheads. Total chuckleheads. Alligator mouth, canary butt. So they take off, and I sat there and laughed about it for a minute and just said, yeah. That's about what I expect. And any like misgiving I ever had about these guys vanished instantly, because if you're going to lie about kicking my butt, when it's 3-on-1, there were 3 of those guys. And me, a 65-year-old guy by himself. And they took off. That's it. So I go on and I do my ride. And I said, those guys are going to mess with my truck. That's what they're going to do, because they're the kind of dickless wonders who would do something like that. But I wasn't too worried about it. It's there. I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'll deal with it if they did. So I did a nice long ride today. I did about 60 miles, and a lot of it was single track. Some of it I hadn't ridden before, and it's awesome. So I get to the end of this, and I come cruising down to the parking lot. This is what I find. Let me pull this up here. I want you all to take a look at this. It says, "Suck it, Hackworth." Notice that suck is spelled wrong. It's missing a K. Suck it, Hackworth. This is the mental acumen that I am dealing with when I deal with these knuckleheads, these chuckleheads in this other group, this pissed off group of people who seem to exist just to try to make my life miserable. This is what I'm dealing with. This is almost like an outtake of Napoleon Dynamite, where the guys are trying to ask a girl out or something, and her boyfriend comes along, and they all take off running through the hayfield or something. Yeah, I'll bet I could throw a motorcycle clear over them mountains. Jesus. I don't know what to say. I absolutely don't know what to say. I showed this to my wife, and I thought she was going to bust a gut. She was laughing so hard. She's the one that actually came up with the Napoleon Dynamite analogy, by the way. Thanks, baby. There you go. Now, I'm putting this out not just in this group. This is going to the YouTube page, and it's going to the motorcyclejazz.com page. Because just like my buddy DW up in Chalice, who talks a lot of shit when he's by himself or sitting behind his monochrome monitor, when you brace that guy in person, he doesn't have anything to say. Just like these guys. It's incredible. It's incredible. Oh, man. So, just like the DW rant, I'm going to take it to these guys. I'm putting this out on all my media because I know that some of you are in that Ride to Hoe group, and that's fine. I don't hold that particularly against you unless you act like a dipshit like the rest of them. So you can be a member of both groups, and I basically don't care unless you convince me that you really don't belong here, which occasionally does happen. Let me tell you about the Ride the Hoe group and how it came to be. So Snoopy, the titular head of that group, was an early Tour of Idaho finisher, and he's one of these guys. I mean, he finished. It's legit. I don't think the guy gilded the lily. I think he actually did it. It was a year when there were a lot of fires, and we had to close off part of the route, but so what? The guy got through, and he got his jersey number, and that was just fine. Now, he did some stuff that was pretty goofy. He decided that he was going to ride into a closed area. He rode up. There were people there saying, nope, you can't ride any of these trails. You got to ride around. So this guy snuck around him to poach a challenge point in a burn area. He was probably within a half a mile of an active fire at that point. And he bragged about it. He wrote about it on the web. And that really pissed me off. I mean, that got that guy on my bad side permanently. You're bragging that you're doing the Tour of Idaho and you rode into a closed area and stuff like that. First of all, it's incredibly stupid. It's an asinine thing to do. You don't need that point. And he knew that. I don't know if any of the rest of you out there have ever played in a rock and roll band or anything, but I've had this experience over and over, and everybody that's ever played in a band will tell you about having this experience. You play in a bar. and we played in a lot of bars, and some of them we were kind of regulars. We were on a rotation, so every 6 weeks we'd come to this bar, play in this bar. There's some dude that shows up every time you play there, and this guy is either nursing a Michelob Light or a Diet Coke, but he spends the minimum amount of money at the bar. He has a single drink that he nurses all night long, And the guy is not trying to dance with girls. He's not socializing with anybody. He's standing there staring at your hands as you play. And he's trying to figure out how you played that solo. I got to figure out how to play the solo and reeling in the years. They just stand there, and they stand like 10 feet from the stage. There's people around them dancing everywhere. And they just stand there and stare at your hands like that. Everybody knows about that. It's a well-known phenomenon if you're in a bar band kind of a set. You see that all the time. This guy who started the Ride to Hoe group is that guy for motorcycles. He is the goofiest person I have ever met in my life. This guy used to lecture me all the time about how I needed to change this, that, and the other. He used to suggest trails for the Tour of Idaho that didn't exist or were foot trails and stuff like that. And I just had to take him with a grain of salt. He said, well, if you're a Tour of Idaho finisher, I thought that you got like special respect. And I said, well, yeah, you do if you're right. But when you're sending me these trails to put on the tour that are in fact foot trails and clearly indicated that way on the MVUM, I'm not going to put that on there. Did you go ride any of this? I mean, did you walk up and look at the sign? Did you look at the map? He used to get these insane arguments with me about like the one pack. He really liked this Osprey pack that was lighter than the Climb crew pack that I've always recommended. Now, Osprey is a company. The pack is lighter. I don't think it's as good for motorsports, but Osprey is also a company that donates a ton of money to people that hate you, that want to kick you off of trails in the woods. I wouldn't buy an Osprey pack to wipe my butt with it, especially not to ride the Tour of Idaho. I'm going to buy stuff from companies that advocate for us, not that try to kick us out of the woods. It's just one thing after another with this guy. Now, he's not a terrible guy. He's just a little weird. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hell, I'm weird too. A lot of people are weird. But this guy is just, he does not know his size. I guess I'll put it that way. So time goes on, and I'm trying to ignore this guy as much as possible. It's, he like 1 year, he went up, he was going to he was another one of these kind of guys that was going to win the tour. So the year after he did it, he was going to come back. And because nobody had ever ridden it north to south, he was like really big on why that wasn't. I said, well, just because this is the way we're going to do it. You don't get to, if you enter a race, you don't get to run the course backward just because you think that's the better way to do it. So this guy has these big plans, and he's going to ride all the way north and turn around, ride all the way back south, be the first person that's done it, own all the records. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to slice some days off because I don't need as many days as you say. And we're all looking at each other going, this guy is crazy. This is not going to happen. And predictably, he made it like one day into this adventure. And the next year, stuff wasn't closed by fires, and we'd made the first day a little bit more difficult. And he didn't get very far. And, caught up with it. This is the kind of thing where if the guy had just shut up and accepted the fact that, look, I made it. I'm part of this community of people that are all, they're pretty cool. They watch after each other. He'd still be a member in good standing with us, but he couldn't do it. He's one of these kind of guys that has to own it. He's got to be one of the drivers, and he just didn't have the goods. I mean, the guy, I would have listened to him if he'd ever made sense. This is the greatest story. He posts this thing on Adventure Rider, and the thread's entitled Investigation of Mistakes in Day 10 of the Tour of Idaho, or Day 7 or whatever it was. I'd put a waypoint at the top of a series of switchbacks and another waypoint at the bottom of a series of switchbacks. And that guy tried to just, instead of going down the switchbacks, he rode down the gully that connected those two waypoints together, that the switchbacks were put in to prevent you from having to do. It was on a Forest Service road. It was just insane. You could see it from the satellite photos what to do. It was just the goofiest thing I ever saw. And this guy was always like that, always like that. So one year, I'm driving up north to shuttle some guys back, and my phone goes off, and it's this guy. And I actually pulled off the road to talk to him because I felt a little bad because I've been blowing him off. He'd been trying to PM me and call me and stuff like that. And so I said, okay, now let's see what he wants. So he offers me an ultimatum. You're either, I know you have this group called the Touricals, and you're going to either make me a part of this group or I am going to do my own thing. I'm going to start another thing like yours, but without all your silly rules. And I said, well, I actually thought a little bit about putting you in the Touricals, but, this is kind of a non-starter right here. You're not going to call me up and threaten me. And if you want to start another group, you just knock yourself right out. I don't care. So he did. So that's how this Ride to Hoe thing got started. And in the beginning, it was a blatant ripoff of the Tour of Idaho. They used most of our route. They started a little bit different. They started down in Jarbidge, but it used most of the same trails. And I think enough people pointed that out to those guys that finally they just decided to, veer off and do something a little bit different. So that group is populated with chuckleheads that just want to piss, moan, and complain, which is why I have zero respect for that group and everybody in it. I just don't. A few years ago, I was out sawing. I was telling Jeff and Jim and some of these other guys this story the other day. I was out sawing, until just a few years ago, I used to spend weeks sawing Tour of Idaho trails. And I'm out sawing one day up near Chalice, and these two guys came along. And interestingly enough, I'm there with a saw, sawing a pretty big log that's in their way. And when I come up on somebody like that, I get off my motorcycle, take off my helmet, and offer to help. Hey, thanks for sawing this. Is there anything I can do to help? Not these two guys. They sit there, they sit down in the grass while I'm sawing, and they're sitting there talking about this great route they're doing, describing it to me while I'm standing there sawing logs. And I said, well, that sounds like the Tour of Idaho route. And they go, oh, no. We're not riding the Tour of Idaho. We wouldn't have anything to do with that. It's too many rules. The guy that runs it's an asshole. No, we're doing grit. We're doing the grit. So I like it when stuff like that happens. So I start talking to these guys a little bit. And sure enough, about 10 minutes later, it occurs to these guys who they're talking to. Once again, they jump on their motorcycles and take right back off down the trail they came down. Alligator mouth, canary ass. It's the most phenomenal thing in the world. I've had people, we've had sawing funds over the years where we raised a little money. And I offered some fellas some money this year to go out and saw. They all declined it, which I thought was incredibly magnanimous, a really well-mannered thing to do. But we collect money for sawing every year. And if there's something that needs to be sawed, we'll send you there to do it. I had a guy a few years ago ask me for saw money because he claimed he'd sawed all these tour trails. He was sawing grit trails. He wasn't sawing tour trails. That's the stuff that I get from those people all the time. It is the world's largest collective of chuckleheads. Chuckleheads. And I found out today. Let me put it up again. Whoops. There you go. Suck it, Hackworth, and suck is spelled wrong. So, I told you all that I know some of you are hoes and you're members of our community, and that's just fine as long as you don't do anything to make a big deal out of it. But I'm going to ask you a little bit of a favor tonight. I would like for you to do something for me, which is to communicate to your colleagues in the hoe community this simple message. You guys don't need to threaten to come and kick my ass anymore if you ever find me in the woods. Now, I'm an easy person to find. I drink coffee at the same coffee shop every morning. I go to the same gym. Like I said to this last rant, I'm the world's easiest guy to find. I have an incredibly high profile. It's not hard to track me down if that's actually what you want to do. But as I said about my good friend DW a while back, you don't have to worry about that anymore because you guys today laid your hands on my truck. Now, it was in the manner of a 6-year-old, but nonetheless, you touched My truck, which I paid a lot of money for, and I actually like a lot. You put your grimy hands and you wrote stuff, that you thought was clever on my truck, and I have no sense of humor about that whatsoever. So in the future, instead of you worrying about finding me, what you really need to worry about is me finding you, because that's what's going to happen next. I'm going to track you guys down, and we're going to have this talk that you claim to want to have, but then run away from when you have the opportunity to do it. The next time, you better be able to run pretty fast, because we're going to chat about you dickweeds putting your hands on my truck. But it's incredible. It's incredible. Alligator mouth, canary ass. All right. That's it for tonight. Please feel free to share. Cheers.